Hey everyone, Justin Fensterman back with you with another Fantasy Football Stock Watch report coming off the heels of Week 8 of your Fantasy Football season. Big blow with Derrick Henry going down, now going to miss the next 6 to 10 weeks. James Robinson went down as well, but hey, Week 8 did have some bright spots, right? Josh Allen, Tom Brady, other big-time performances that we're going to talk about as we go over some of the players trending up and some that are trending down when it comes to fantasy football production potential. Let's get right to the action. First riser, Michael Pittman Jr. Last week, Carson Wentz made the risers list, and Pittman has had some big weeks because of it. Pittman has produced 3 20-point fantasy efforts in PPR leagues, and then he eclipsed 30 points after catching 10 passes, with 2 of them being for touchdowns in Week 8. The Colts have a favorable schedule coming up prior to their bye in Week 14, and some of their matchups include the Jaguars, Buccaneers, and Texans, and Pittman has received 23.6% of the Colts' targets. He's currently a top 15 producer at wide receiver and ranks in the top 10 at the position in receiving yards with 594. Only 11 wide receivers have been targeted more than Pittman. Up next on the rise, Elijah Mitchell. Mitchell has received 18 carries in both of the 49ers games since the bye, and even with JaMycal Hasty back in the mix, Mitchell plays a good amount more snaps than him, and Trey Sermon is a complete non-factor. Mitchell has been posting 5.3 yards per carry this year. Only 4 other running backs who have played at least 5 games average more yards per carry on the ground this year. Mitchell runs behind a strong offensive line, and he doesn't fumble, and he's even rushed for over 100 yards and scored a touchdown in his last 2 outings. Final riser, Michael Carter. Unless Mike White can throw for over 400 yards every week until Zach Wilson comes back, but even if that is the case, Carter has been plenty active in the Jets' passing game lately. Carter has caught 17 balls on 23 targets collectively in his last 2 contests. He continues to receive double-digit rushes, and he just had 15 against the Bengals. He's seen his snap percentage increase throughout the year, going from 52% before the bye to 71% on average since the Jets' bye in Week 6. Both Carter and Ty Johnson have been utilized heavily in the Jets' passing game over the last 2 weeks, but Carter gets a lot more carries than Johnson. Mike White has been hitting Carter with passes, and that shouldn't change, being that it's a very difficult matchup coming up against the Colts. Now some players who are falling. Let's start with Antonio Gibson. Gibson has been playing hurt throughout the season, and this fracture in his shin is impacting his performance on the field. While the Washington football team's bye in Week 9 should benefit Gibson by giving him some rest, will it be enough? He continues to play hurt. He hasn't rushed for 60 yards since Week 5. He hasn't scored a touchdown since Week 5. Once Gibson returns from Washington's bye, he gets a date with the Buccaneers, and they are very difficult to run on. I'd say they can throw to Gibson more in that game, but he hasn't been targeted in Washington's passing game more than 3 times since the first week of the season, and they have J.D. Mckissick catching 20 passes combined in his last 3 weeks. Up next, Laviska Shenault Jr. Being a Shenault investor has been very frustrating because his target share has been up and down since the 3rd week of the season. Shenault has eclipsed 10 points in PPR leagues just 2 times in his last 5 contests. Once DJ Chark got hurt, it should have opened up consistent targets for Shenault, but instead, he's seen 4 targets or fewer in 3 of his last 5 outings. He hasn't scored a single touchdown, and he's eclipsed 60 yards receiving just once all year. Trevor Lawrence ranks 12th in pass attempts, and since Week 5, we've seen Jamal Agnew get more love in the Jaguars' offense. Final faller, Odell Beckham Jr. There are a lot of problems with this situation. Beckham is hurt and won't have shoulder surgery until the offseason. The Browns are a run-heavy offense, and Baker Mayfield doesn't throw a lot of passes. Beckham has produced double figures in fantasy just twice in 6 games. He hasn't scored a touchdown, and he's eclipsed 30 yards receiving just 1 time in his last 5 games. Beckham's fantasy stock has been falling a bit since Week 5, and it takes an even bigger hit with Jarvis Landry back on the field. Landry has received more targets than Beckham in the 2 games that they both played together in. Not ideal. That is your latest Stock Watch report, FA Nation. Make sure you keep your foot on the gas, because no matter how many injuries you suffer or no matter how many underperformers you have, there is always an opportunity on that waiver wire. Invest wisely, even in fantasy football trades. Good luck.